pleasure to introduce Commissioner Robinson.
One of the greatest places to live, work, play, and visit. I have the distinct honor and pleasure of introducing Senator Kim on this afternoon, but before I do that, I would be remiss if I didn't recognize the other commissioners that are here today. It is Deputy Director Melanie Morano, I could tell you that Senator Kim served in the U.S. Congress from 2019 to 2025. I could tell you that he served the U.S. State Department. I could tell you he was born in Boston, July 12th. But I want to talk to you about the heart of the leader. Heart for service, heart for the people. And as you heard, 85th Town Hall, and it hasn't even been 100 days that he's been here. This is what true leadership looks like. Being present, visible, and responsive to the people and the constituents in which they serve. So, that's right. And in a time such as this, what is happening at the national level impacts us all, regardless of socioeconomic background, regardless of your religion, your race, your sexual preference or orientation. We are all impacted by what's happening. But when you have, that's right, when you have a leader, it doesn't matter what party you belong to. It matters what the people need. And in the state of New Jersey, what that means with that congressional $880 billion cuts, it impacts us all. But because we have a fighter and a leader that is in the trenches, that rolls up his sleeves and makes sure that we're getting what we need and what we deserve here in New Jersey. Let's give it up for U.S. Senator Andy.
Thank you for that kind introduction. I thought you were going to go into what my SAT scores were. But commissioners, local leaders, it is such a pleasure and an honor to be here in Somerset County for the first time to be able to stand before you as your United States Senator. I am honored to be able to. I have to say it is a deeply humbling experience. You know, I'm a public school kid from New Jersey. Never thought I'd have the shot to be in politics. I come from a family of political nobodies. And to be able to have this chance to be able to step up, I am the 2005th American ever to serve as a United States Senator in this country's history. And it shows you just what it means to be able to serve and why that is so important is that we understand this. But it's not just what your title is and what your job is, it's about what you do with it, right? It's about how do we make the most of this experience. I didn't want just the title. I didn't want to do this just for the sake of doing this. I stand before you not just as your United States Senator, but I stand before you as a father of a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, 2 little boys. Yeah. They're here, they'd be causing a lot of trouble, so I decided to leave them at home. But I'll be honest with you, I see what's happening right now, and I just am terrified about what kind of America my kids are going to grow up. I'm the son of immigrants. My parents immigrated to this country 50 years ago. And when I asked them why they wanted to but I asked them why did they come to the United States? They said that they did this because they felt that here in America they could guarantee that the family that they raised, that me and my sister would have a better life and more opportunities than they did. They felt that you could guarantee it here in this country. And that is the promise, right? That is what so many families came here for, why it is we go. And I'll be honest with you, that's all I want for my kids. is just being able to guarantee them a better life and more opportunities. But with all the chaos and the crisis that's happening, with all the rolling back, whether that's on healthcare or climate change or on gun violence prevention or any number of things, I'll be honest with you, I don't actually think I could look my two kids in the eye right now and tell them, I guarantee you, you will have a better life and more opportunities than I do. What is happening to this country? How have we gotten to this point? And that is why I called for these town halls, because I just felt, and I know so many of you feel the same, that this is an inflection point moment for this country. This is a historic moment for our country. And I'll be honest with you, I don't want to live through history. I'd much rather live through simpler times where I can see my kids some more. I remember there was a woman telling me, we were talking about how unprecedented everything is, and she's just like, I wish I lived in precedented times again. I feel it too. But when I think through it, I had one of the greatest honors of my life is I got to call an incredible man, John Lewis, a colleague of mine. And I asked him once, I said, what does this moment in America, this was a few years ago before he passed, what does this moment in America look like to you?
That's good.
And he said, look, you can't compare it to past times, because they're all different, but he said, yes, this is a historic moment, which was powerful to hear from someone who literally carries the scars of history upon his body. But what he said after that, he said, these moments of history are defined by those who step up. That's why I wanted us to gather. Because I get it. A lot of you are feeling a lot of anxiety, right? I was talking to someone that was yesterday. I did a town hall down at Egg Harbor. Someone's telling me there that it feels hard to breathe sometimes because of just the uncertainty about what comes next. But it's important that in these times that we don't hide away, and we don't turn away. Instead, we step up. Some of you heard me say this line a lot lately where I say that I believe that the opposite of democracy is apathy. It's if you give up, you feel helpless about it. So I just wanted to start by sharing them because I know, and I've talked to a number of you as you came in, and that's why these town halls are important. Because this right now, right here, this is, in my opinion, one of the most important American traditions about gathering. It shows us that our democracy doesn't just exist down in D.C. It's not just in the halls of the Capitol or at the White House. It's right here in Somerset County. It's right here in this room right now. It's about us as Americans, as people living here, coming together to talk about what our shared path forward is. About what keeps you up at night. What worries. It's important for me to hear. Because as I said, these are not normal times. These are times where we have to think through everything that is at our disposal to be able to move our country in a different direction. In particular, I wanted to be in this area because we have some real debates here about what leadership means, about what we're trying to get done, and about what our congressional delegation should be voting for or against. So I wanted to be here because I know you don't always have opportunities to have town halls. Is that right? If you have somebody voting in a way you don't like, there's not a whole lot of opportunity to raise your voice, right? But I want to stand before you and say, I am your representative in Congress too. You are my constituents too. So I don't want you to feel like you don't have somebody that is here to listen. I decided to call this because I wanted to speak honestly about how I feel about this moment. And I want to try to speak in a way that can show that this isn't about political parties or where you stand on the ideological spectrum. The challenges that we face in this country right now should scare and worry everybody. Because the threat isn't about just differences of policies, it's about whether we believe in the Constitution or not. With all clarity, again, not from a political place, not from a partisan place, but from an American perspective, that right now we have a president that is abusing his power. Very clear. And we are not on the cusp of a constitutional crisis. We are in a constitutional crisis right now. And we have to be able to mobilize. What I want to lay out for you are 5 points in terms of how I understand this moment and how I'm trying to message this to the American people to try to understand what is at stake right now. Now, number 1, we are seeing an effort right now by the executive branch, by this president, to seize power unconstitutionally from the other 2 branches of government. A lawlessness that has been unleashed. Trying to talk about it, as we see with Elon Musk and Doge, trying to make the guise of saying that we're fighting for efficiency. But we know that that's not the case, right? That's just the facade, that's the smokescreen that is trying to be able to push a radical agenda that is trying to fundamentally reshape the democracy that our founding fathers put forward almost 250 years ago. That is what is happening. So I don't want, because I get it, if you go to your average, if you go to stop any random American on the street, you say, hey, do you want to see, maybe we can shrink the government some, maybe we can cut some of the spending. They'll be like, okay, that sounds good. But when you actually tell them what is actually happening, what we're trying to see on that front, what we know is that this is going to do real damage to a lot of Americans around the country. That we understand that our commitment as Americans, and frankly for us in Congress, we swear an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. That is our guide point. And what we see right now is people like Russell Vought. Do you guys know this guy? Those of you who don't know, he's the head of an organization, OMB, Office of Management and Budget. This is someone who was one of the lead authors of Project 2025. Somebody who has really orchestrated a lot of this in terms of understanding, again, how they try to think about it as the presidency as a unitary power, right? This idea that an all-powerful president. Well, I thought we fought against that 250 years ago, right? Right. I thought we understood that power is with the people. That's why the legislature is Article 1, the branch of government closest to the American people. So that is something that we are seeing over and over again. And what they're using to be able to do this is a consolidation of power through an abuse of emergency powers. So we see over and over again, whether they're declaring a national energy emergency at a time when we're actually producing more energy than ever before in American history, including fossil fuel energy, and they're complaining, using that to be able to consolidate their power. They're pushing forward on things like the Alien Enemies Act. You probably saw that in recent days. Something that they're using to try to be able to declare that they have emergency powers, whether it's to deport unilaterally or any other number of things. Well, look, the Alien Enemies Act has only been used 3 times in our nation's history. 1812 War, World War I, and World War II. Each of those circumstances, we had a war declared by Congress to be able to authorize that. We do not have that right now. We do not have the ability for a president to invoke this. And then, by the way, the last time that this was invoked in World War II, our country used it to round up Japanese Americans all over this country and be able to send them into the middle of nowhere. One of the most shameful moments of our nation. We see this right now when it comes to the use of tariffs, saying that declaring a national emergency with our northern border, trying to use that as an excuse to push forward on tariffs that are going to hurt everyday Americans, small businesses. In New Jersey, our state exports $8.8 billion of goods to Canada every single year. It's going to hurt our state, hurt our businesses, just so he can pick a fight with our allies and our partners. Now, this is the kind of problem that we're seeing left and right. In addition to that, we're seeing a tremendous effort to be able to not just discredit the judiciary, but to go after them and demonize the judiciary. An effort right now to trust, and I'll be honest with you, when we see this, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. I'm working right now with Judge Esther Salas. Do you know who this is? Judge Esther Salas, a judge here in New Jersey. She had an incident where when in her courtroom, she made some rulings. One of the first people that was affected by the rulings didn't like it, so he showed up at her house, shot her husband, shot her kid died.
What?
This isn't theoretical. You know, when you're going after, you're demonizing judges, you see the richest person in the world going after, naming individual judges in our country. That is dangerous. And this is something that's not just trying to discredit our judiciary, but trying to undermine it all. I mean, I was looking through this. I mean, you might have saw that there was I was just talking about the Alien Enemies Act, where there's a particular judge, Judge Branchburg, who's been ruling this way. And this is what Donald Trump said about him. He said, quote, "This radical left lunatic of a judge, a troublemaker, an agitator who was sadly appointed by Barack Hussein Obama, was not elected president. He didn't win the popular vote. It's not hard to read. You get the point, right? But look, I mean, the grammar's all wrong. I mean, it's just... That's why you're trying to get rid of the Department of Education. Understands the concept of the lowest common denominator. But then look, he's joking aside. Judge Branchburg, he's talking about us appointed by Barack Hussein Obama. No, he was appointed by George W. Bush. Yes, he was elevated to another job by President Obama. He was elevated to other positions by Chief Justice Roberts. But this is someone who, like when I looked into what his ruling record was, Branchburg, he also, he ruled in favor of the conservative group to get 14,000 emails of Hillary Clinton released when she was at the State Department. He ruled in favor of Trump to prevent the release of his tax records. Doesn't sound like somebody who is a radical left lunatic. And it's just trying to undermine that credibility. In fact, when you look at the judges who have ruled against Donald Trump since January 20th, and they did sort of a ruling based off of just sort of the general positions of these judges, whether liberal, centrist, conservatives, and this is what that was found. So the judges that ruled against him, liberal judges ruled against him 84% of the time, centrist judges 86% of the time, conservative judges 82% of the time. Seems pretty straightforward across the board. So when the president's wondering why is it that these judges are ruling against him, what I just say is stop breaking the law. So it's just one of these things that we're seeing now, this push to try to impeach judges. But look, what I can assure you is that it requires 67 senators to be able to vote to impeach and convict and kick out a judge. And I can just assure you right now, certainly I will never do that to be able to kick a judge out just for them doing their job. What we've only seen in the American history is about, corruption and bribery and other things that sadly in New Jersey knows too much about. But, that is the kind of stuff that we need to make sure that we are pushing against and trying to preserve the credibility of our judges, the credibility of our judiciary, the credibility of our governance. And I get it's hard. We live in a time of the greatest amount of distrust in government in modern American history. So I understand it's challenging. but I just think it's so important for us to engage. The second thing that I want to get across is that when we see what this president is doing, what we see is the actions that they have direct harm as well as acting out of retribution. This is a president that is using his power to go after people who oppose him, people that are dissenting, people that are stepping up in different ways. Look how we've seen him push forward with trying to kick out and fire people at the Department of Justice who have taken on different roles because it was their job. We see this with private companies, businesses. I talked to a number of business leaders who are talking about how there's a chilling effect right now in the business community. Worried about sticking their necks out because they might get called out. Because we saw law firms and other companies called out, and the president trying to get rid of their clients, pressure them in those different ways. We see it from a number of other angles. Whether it's chilling of dissent, and whether that's students like Khalil, or we see Habitat for Humanity and organizations like that are being attacked because of work regarding climate. We're seeing this on so many levels, using the most powerful position in the country to just go after people. What we're also seeing, as I said, is an effort of direct harm. And this is, again, really important to understand. We saw this very vividly when it came to the funding freeze issue. I don't know how. There's so many nonprofits, other organizations, community services, government services here in Somerset around the state reaching on out to us, worried about whether or not they're going to be able to provide for people in the community that have disabilities, or seniors, or Head Start programs for kids, other things that are so essential. And in this county, when there are issues related to flooding and other problems like that, and I know that they're going through the hazard mitigation efforts, questions about clean water, other issues that we need to work on. We need to make sure that our services are going forward and people can have confidence in that. I'll be honest with you, so much of this is why I just could not support that continuing resolution the other week. Shame on Speaker Johnson for what he did. It wasn't about putting the Democrats in a bind. It was about putting America in a bind, giving us a no-win situation here where either we have a CR moving forward that is going to hurt so many Americans, or seeing a shutdown that is going to hurt so many Americans. And I say this as someone who worked as a civil servant. I worked in 4 different departments and agencies. I worked through multiple shutdowns, working without knowing whether or not I was going to get paid for that work, whether or not I'll have a job going down the road. So I understand it. I raised this issue yesterday at a town hall, and a federal worker was there, and she was expressing, her concern, saying, hey, look, I understand the challenges when it came to the CR, but look, a shutdown could very well mean that after a number of weeks that federal workers could very well lose their jobs entirely. So I just want to express, yes, there are real challenges. We were just talking about the importance of the judiciary, right? And yes, after a certain number of weeks, the budget of the judiciary could very well come into problems in question, and the ability to be able to move these cases that are important right now to try to stop Donald Trump and Elon Musk could very well slow down. So I do express and understand the challenges there. But look, I still strongly disagree with Senator Schumer in terms of that approach. I think it's important that we stop that. And why I did not come to that easily, but why I made that decision is because right in a couple months from now, we're going to be starting up this process right again when it comes to the appropriations and the budget. What's going to stop them from saying, oh, we're going to call their bluff again? How do we show that we mean business and that we can't just do and fold just because we are the party that's trying to be responsible right now and worried about things? We have to be able to mobilize in that direction. So I understand it's challenging, but that's why I wanted us to gather here, so that we can understand what's at stake, that we can understand the challenges that are before us, but recognizing that we have to mobilize across our entire community to be able to move this in the direction that we need to. A third thing that I want to raise is watching. It's one of the most painful things for me to see. Many of you know I worked in diplomacy and national security before. I was out in Munich a month ago when I was there at the conference when Vice President Vance opened his mouth and delivered what I thought was one of the most shameful foreign policy speeches I've heard from an American official. Standing in front of our NATO allies, denigrating them. We see this president talking about how, bringing NATO into question. I mean, look, I remember, I know a lot of us here in New Jersey, we were affected by September 11th. The only time that NATO ever brought together collective defense, Article 5, was in the defense of the United States after September 11th. Yeah. And we benefit from our allies and our partners. I worked in Afghanistan. I lived and worked on a NATO military base where we saw service members, military from these other countries protecting us, helping us, dying alongside our service members, sacrificing. And what do they get? They get J.D. Vance berating them, taunting them. It was really shameful. And what I see is not just about the rhetoric, but what is being pushed right now, and this is what I want to make clear. That what they are pushing, it has its own strategy to it, one that I think is very dangerous. They're trying to push a neo-isolationism strategy right now that is trying to withdraw America from the rest of the world. When they talk about America first, I translate that to America only, or America alone. I get it. A lot of people are wondering, well, what do we get out of this? What do we get out of our leadership? I can tell you it's so important. Not just for our security, but for our economy. Being able to make sure our businesses have those markets that we can grow upon the innovation that's out there. It's something that we benefit from. And we cannot just hand that over to people like Vladimir Putin, who is just, again, so happy right now. So happy. I mean, it's just like you couldn't, I'm watching how these negotiations, I'm watching how everything that's happening in Ukraine is collapsing right now. And I said, I simply cannot think of a better way to do this for Vladimir Putin if I even tried. I mean, it's really happening exactly like how he would want. And we're seeing that. Meanwhile, we're seeing Trump saying that America should own Gaza. Saying that, given a green light for this violence to take back up, and we're seeing right now, humanitarian assistance being blocked to the people of Palestine. We're seeing, breakdown of the diplomatic talks in that way that is going to just lead to greater and greater violence. We're seeing so many challenges right now around the world that are affecting us, not just abroad, but here at home. And I think that is ultimately something that could be so devastating when we see this sense of American decline. And when I talk to leaders and officials of other countries, they have just told me, hey, look, they just said, we can't wait for you anymore. We're going to just move forward. You let us know when you want to get back in the game. It's so sad. Just that the idea of American decline is so real right now. And we have to wonder about what comes next and worry about it immensely. The fourth thing is you're seeing all this and you're seeing this all go together and it's missing the fundamental thing that we should be doing, which is about trying to tackle high costs, about addressing these challenges that so many people are worried about. When I was going around the state last year, that was by far the top thing that people were worried about, the challenges of affordability. And that's not just here in New Jersey, it's around the entire country. And that is a place where not only is this president not doing enough, that over 60% of Americans surveyed say that this president is not doing enough to tackle high costs and lower costs. In fact, he's making it worse. Picking fights with Mexico and Canada and our allies and our partners. I asked the Secretary of Commerce during the confirmation here, I asked him, are you distinguishing between allies and partners and enemies and adversaries? He said no. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy right now. And what we're seeing now is an effort where these tariffs go underway. We could very well see upwards of $2,000 added per person in terms of costs every single year. So we call the tariffs what they are. They're a tax. A tax put on us by Trump. And I think that that's something that we need to make sure gets out there. I think that is one of the biggest weaknesses that Trump has in terms of how we try to mobilize and how we try to engage going forward in terms of what comes next. The last thing that I'll just talk through, the fifth issue here that I want to raise is, well, if it's not about lowering costs, if it's not about actually helping us with our daily lives, well, what's it about? And I think what's very clear is just this idea of like, look, you have the richest, you're the richest person in the world. The richest person in the world who is engaged in efforts to gut and dismantle our government, that has also had billions of dollars of contracts before our government, and also running the biggest super PAC in our country, that should not only allow them. This is a level of corruption and conflict of interest that should send people across the political spectrum together and saying, this is wrong. This should not be allowed. So when you see Elon Musk bragging about, oh, we got rid of this number, this thousand, tens of thousands of workers that are at the VA, serving veterans, or this number, or we're gutting NIH grants that are trying to cure diseases. And they're bragging about the things that they're dismantling. Keep in mind, this isn't about them trying to save that money. They're not trying to pay down the deficit with it. Where is it going? Follow the money, right? Going right back to him. It's going into these trillions of dollars of tax cuts that this administration is trying to put forward. So that fifth thing I really wanted, it's about that corruption. And that's something that, again, we've seen here in New Jersey, how you can mobilize people across the political spectrum, stand up against corruption, standing up against that type of abuse. And that's something that I think is so important for us to be able to get across. And look, I'm going to open it up for questions in a little bit, but I want to just frame this question about where do we go from here? Now, when we're thinking about what comes next, let's look at what's on the horizon here. And what are the fights to come? And I think we need to talk about it in terms of what is it that we're trying to achieve. One thing that I think we need to make a big push for over the next couple of weeks in particular is we have to try to stop these tariffs. I think that that's critical. I'm trying to go around the state and mobilize small businesses that are talking about how this is going to increase their costs, how this is going to increase the costs for builders trying to build homes, or consumers in terms of being able to buy groceries. So here in Somerset County, I ask you to go around, talk to businesses, whether you own them or people you know. Let's try to think about it. Let's try to document what kind of harm is going to be done, and in particular, try to get the business community to be able to speak out more. Try to get consumers to be able to speak out more, especially those that maybe supported this president in the last election, now understanding and waking up that their price tags of their receipts on their groceries are to start going up. Other things like that. When we see that over 60% of people surveyed say he's not doing enough on this, that's something that gives us an opening. There's a reason why he delayed the tariffs on Mexico and Canada. I think he's feeling pressure. And I think that that's a place where we need to continue to push. Another thing that is right on the horizon that I think we need to organize around and be able to work together on. And there's lots of things that we can do together in this, but we have to put up a fight to save Medicaid. We have to do it. I think back on 2017, I was just a regular citizen. I've never thought about politics. But I saw my own congressman here in New Jersey leading the charge trying to gut the Affordable Care Act. And that's something that activated me. It activated a lot of people. Frankly, it activated a lot of people who've never been engaged in politics before. Never showed up to town halls before. Never got involved in campaigns before. I think we're at another moment. And when we look at Medicaid, 2 million people in the state out of 9 million people get their health care through Medicaid. 1 out of every 3 kids in the state, Medicaid. The disability community, those that need it the most, seniors at long-term care facilities, nursing homes, Medicaid. These are powerful communities that we can try to mobilize. I've been going around engaging, and I'm sure you can as well here, about people with disabilities. Help them, work with them to share their stories about what their needs are and how concerned this would be. I brought to the joint address. My guest was a gentleman named Kevin, cerebral palsy. Is relying upon Medicaid for his health care, for his caregiver, for modification for his home. The way he described it at the Capitol is he said he needs it to be alive. And if he doesn't have it, he will be dead. And I know that sounds stark, but that is his life. And people need to hear that. And they need to hear it not just from people like me, because, I get it. I'm in politics now, so people, he's just saying it. That's what that party says. And I get it, the tribalism that is there. But here in this room, across this county, across this state, we have authentic voices that can speak from personal experience and their personal fear. A mom just yesterday at the town hall down in Egg Harbor was talking about her son with Down syndrome. And the need to be able to have a caregiver and the need for Medicaid for them to be able to live their lives, otherwise she wouldn't be able to work. And if she can't work, how are they going to survive? This is very real, and I think it's a place that we can very much mobilize over and try to think through here in Somerset, to think throughout this congressional district. Who are the people that can speak out? People that can give voice to that. And I'm happy to engage and try to figure that out all over as I'm trying to build a mobilization across this entire state in all the counties to be able to lift this up. Because I cannot be thinking about the work that I do just simply as someone who's a legislator or a political leader. I need to think about this as a movement leader, as someone who is working with you all to try to mobilize and be able to do everything that we can. As we saw back in 2017, we saw how that pressure was able to build up. Give space for McCain and others to vote against it. We actually stopped the ability for them to gut the ACA. We need that kind of moment again. So I just ask that we try to think about coming out from this gathering here on what we can do. The third thing that I'm trying to mobilize on, as I told you, I'm somebody that has dedicated so much of my time to try to fight corruption. I'm putting a lot of my efforts in the Senate right now, a lot of our staff efforts, a lot of our mobilization right now into investigations into this administration to try to identify who has corruption that is. I am on a government affairs subcommittee, the equivalent of the oversight committee, and we are trying to push our resources there to be able to investigate. As I told you, I'm one of the few former civil servants, to work in the U.S. Congress. I have former colleagues of mine in all these different departments and agencies around the government that are feeding us information, just sharing just how much danger we are seeing right now, and how much of that is being, again, siphoned out because of the corruption and so many other problems that we're seeing across the board. So I wanted to inform you some of the places I'm putting our effort, and I think we need to mobilize around that issue of corruption, be able to really expose it, because I do think that that's the kind of place where we can start to see a lot of coalescence around, get the media and others to really build into to be able to do that and put this administration on their heels. A fourth thing is about, we can't just be talking about what we're against. We have to now be able to put forward our plan in terms of what we want to do. When it came to whether it's the CR or others, we should have put forward our own budget. Said this is what we believe in. And here is a budget that is about protecting our health care, our social security, protecting our services, protecting what it is that we care about in this country. And look at what Speaker Johnson did. And show just the disrespect that we see to civil servants, public servants, and so many other things that he's pushing forward on. And we need to show that for the American people so they can see the difference. So that is something that we have to do better on this do have to build a wide coalition. This cannot be just about party identification. This is something where we have to find the words and the vocabulary, and that's why I was trying to give you my best thoughts with those 5 points about how we try to explain this, that this should not, again, be seen as just partisan policy differences. But it's the difference between those who want to defend our Constitution and those who want to trample our Constitution. And this is something that on the eve of the 250th anniversary of our nation, as we push forward this year into that anniversary, I think we can use that as a time to really try to mobilize and just think through and reflect on what does it mean to be an American 250 years in. Are we going to recommit ourselves to the Constitution? Are we going to recommit ourselves to this country? That is what I think we need to engage on. As I said, I'm just so glad that you all came out today. There's a lot of work to be done, a lot that I know you're scared about, and I need to hear that. And why I wanted to do this is it's not just for you to listen to me, that I need to listen to you. And whether you voted for me or not, you're my boss. My job is to serve all of you. And I get it, we may not agree. There could be very well people here that disagree with a lot of what I said. I will listen to you. And we will try to find our way to be able to engage and remember that we are part of something bigger than all of us. Because that's something that this president clearly has not ever learned probably. But something that we need to make sure that we are holding ourselves up and that we are fighting for what we believe in to give my kids, your grandkids, the kind of future they deserve. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Sorry I went on for so long. I hope that was important. I hope that was helpful for you, though, right? Get a sense. I'll make sure that we're going to take as many questions as we can. I want to be mindful of your time, but I will, at some point, we'll end the town hall, but I'll stick around and be here until I answer everybody. But we'll try to get through as many questions as we can. We got the microphones. We'll do 2 at a time to try to move quickly through this.
Hi, thank you for coming, I wanted to say. But what I really wanted to say is I don't have to tell you what our concerns is. I think everybody has said it already. What I guess I'm really asking for is that I think instead of more people complaining that they do have to get up and protest, I don't know how to make people do it. I've been at protests and seeing very little people in Trenton. I'm going on the 29th down to the Tesla dealership in Springfield to protest over there. I'm asking if there's anybody higher up that could be our leader to help me get more people to get up and go out there and be in the important areas where there's more visibility and not stuck in some corner that only a little newspaper knows about. So I don't know who is a higher up that can come and help.
Hi. I appreciate your comments about not just needing to be on the defense and stay who we're against, but also go on the offense and lay out a vision for what the Democratic Party needs to stand for. On that note, I'm somebody who appreciates how much we benefit from our relationships with NATO, from our position in the world. And one of the things that seems to me to be the biggest problem is that we have one of the greatest economies in the world, but it is not equitably shared by our citizens. And it speaks to the corruption that we have in this country, that we have a couple of billionaires able to buy off this government. So what I want to know is, on the note of what the Democratic Party needs to stand for, what that vision needs to be, Where do you see that going? And I would like to, I would implore an effort to get rid of the money in our political system. And that needs to start from leaders on our side of the aisle. We need to actually stand up and walk the walk on that. And people like Senator Schumer, I believe that's a big reason why we saw what we saw last week.
Let me take them in reverse orders. You're absolutely right. Look, the money in politics, it's so corrosive. You know, one of the darkest days of our democracy was the Citizens United decision. Something that unleashed these floodgates, and it just allowed for all this dark money to be able to allow billionaires to have so much sway. You know, and it's not just the sway, but it's the disinformation that they're feeding, right? And that's what we see so much of right now. You know, you have so many people in America, they're like, I don't know what to believe anymore. You know, and that's the point. They're trying to money that up, and that's, you know, something that I find so despicable. You know, it's why, you know, from the outset, I've never taken corporate PAC money or other things like that. And frankly, it's not just about the campaign money. Probably the most popular piece of legislation I ever introduced was legislation that would ban members of Congress and senior government officials from owning and trading individual stocks. So we can't be having people sitting on the Armed Services Committee that are invested in Lockheed Martin and Boeing and these Raytheon and these different companies, looking out for their stock portfolio and their bottom line rather than what's best for the American people. So you're right. You know, we have this huge problem of special interest. Huge problem. And look, you know, I think many of you saw, you know, I'm trying to fight this fight here in New Jersey too. You know, make sure that we're cleaning this up and having reforms that are needed to be able to address this. And that's something that I think is necessary because, especially on the Democrat side, I won't go into the political talk here, but we have to show that anyone that's trying to meet this moment right now needs to show, you know, we're not trying to defend a status quo that is clearly broken in this country. Not just on the politics, but on our economy. That we live in a time of the greatest amount of inequality in our nation's history, and it's getting worse and worse. You know, and we need to make sure that we're standing up. While we have a billionaire who is complaining about how public servants get paid too much and calling Social Security a Ponzi scheme, we need to be going back and saying, no, what we need is to be able to lift the cap when it comes to Social Security in terms of what rich people are able to pay into it. Have people like Elon Musk get their fair share so that we can make a solid and make it there to be able to protect so many people. You're right, we need to show what we're for. Now we're trying to solve these problems. And I think that that's so critical, and I'm glad, you know, that you raised that on so many different levels, both on the economic side, on the foreign policy side, and others. You know, in terms of what you raised, in terms of protests and other efforts, you know, I applaud you for doing that, and I think that visibility is important. And look, for those, you know, I get it. You know, some people, you know, don't necessarily want to go out and do protests, or it might be difficult to make some phone calls or other things. And I get it. I remember there's, you know, a woman that I talked to a couple of years ago. She's like, oh, I've never knocked doors before. I never, you know, did protests or did that before. And I'm like, well, I never ran for a Senate before. You know, we're all trying to do things, and it's tough. But, like, you know, gets back to why it is I'm doing this town hall, for instance. I get it. You know, a lot of my colleagues don't want to do these because, look, you don't know what's going to happen, right? You don't know who's going to show up. But that's the point, right? It's like, the way I say it is like, if you're only having comfortable conversations in politics, it means you're not talking to all the people you need to be talking to. This job is fundamentally about putting yourself out there. And my discomfort, putting myself in front of a room full of people, is nothing compared to the discomfort of people who are going to have their Medicaid cut, to be able to have, you know, their Social Security in danger, and all these other problems. So what I just say is, look, even my life, I know a lot of people, unfortunately, I know a lot of people who are buying into some of this disinformation. And I'm making a concerted effort to try to find ways to be able to engage. And that doesn't mean you go and lecture them. But it's go and say, hey, look, I understand how you're feeling. Like, I feel like things are broken too. I understand that. I'm not trying to defend what's happened. We need to find that fix. But I hope we can all agree that what we see right now, that's not how you go about it. Try to think through. Make a list. 10 people you know. 20 people you know. Try to see if you can spend some time in the coming weeks. Trying to reach on out. I know it's not always easy. And it's sad that in our country we find that our politics are breaking up families and breaking up so many other parts of it. And that is showing how corrosive a moment it is. When it comes to protests and other things, I know there are organizations out there. I'm not able to speak to that directly right now in this capacity in an official town hall. But I would say, look, as I was saying, I'm trying to mobilize across the state, and you'll be seeing things that I'll be doing on a number of fronts, and others as well. But what I'll say is it's often easiest to do when you can find other people to do it alongside. The biggest challenge is about how do you sustain your energy, sustain the concerns that are out there. Because they just want, as you say, keep saying they, because it's just the general politics. But, how many times have we seen a mass shooting, and then, we see, the gun lobby, just try to wait it out, right? Because they're like, oh, there's all this fervor now, but in a couple days, in a couple of weeks, it'll just go away. Because they're counting on you to lose your attention. So be able to find other people, like-minded people, and it sounds like there's some people here in this room, find each other. Be able to sustain that energy and try to go through it together, because that's going to be how you keep it up. And I know it's exhausting. I feel tired too. But we have to keep at it. Thank you. Why don't we take a couple more questions?
Hi, my name is Fabiano Vilas. I'm a high school from Franklin Township. And, I want to first off say I'm honored to be here. Not many people get to see their senator or state congressman a lot. Secondly, I want to talk about the direction of Democrats. I don't expect you to explain the whole party. There's a lot happening, but a lot of people want answers. Polls show policies like expanding Medicaid, Medicare, taxing the wealthy, and even raising the wages have 70 to 80% support, including from independents and even some Republicans. Yet Democrats often water down their agenda to appease centrists or corporate donors, which leaves voters feeling betrayed and that Democrats are out of touch, especially after Republicans just gutted social programs to fund tax cuts for the rich. Why does the party keep sidelining popular progressive ideas? And shouldn't this explain why Democrats' favorability is collapsing with the working class voters, as we just seen with the CNN poll that had, I think, Democrats at 27% favorability? Why not go on the offense? Pass these policies through reconciliation or filibuster reform, and let Republicans defend opposing them. Let Republicans show who they are by opposing these policies.
So what should we do? What the heck should we do? That's the big question, right? We don't have levers. We don't have power with a minority. If you're a Democrat. Here's something. It's tax season. Why the hell are we mindlessly pressing the send button, sending our money to Washington when it's going into an absolute void? We have no idea what's being done with the money. In the past, we had representatives who maybe voted for a line item or something. Now we have no idea where the money is going. Why should we send our money to Washington? I'm a small-time TikToker, meaning I post a celebrity TikTok and it gets 300 views. A month ago, the first week that Doge came into power and swept into USAID, I was so pissed. And then this idea, why am I sending this money? So I posted a TikTok that was basically hashtag don't pay taxes. It got 1 million views. Why should we pay the taxes and where will it go?
Wow.
Honestly. take that one first. I mean, look, I understand that sentiment and that anger there, but look, right now, you're right. You know, we have a lawlessness that is out there. You know, and there's no way that, you know, given that we see Speaker Johnson, Senator Thune unwilling to be able to do their job in terms of being able to direct where the spending's going, and we know Trump's not even looking at, you know, where that is. But look, I for one, people could disagree. I personally don't think we should be going down that path. I understand that sentiment and trying to figure out how to try to figure this out, but look, you know, I think there are important things that we need to be able to fund, and we need to try to keep that mobilizing. I think there are ways that we can protest, raise our voice, that we understand that challenge, but like, I understand where your heart is coming from, and it's hard, it's tough to see. But we'll continue to try to have that oversight, continue to try to do our best to shine that light and try to mobilize. I think I, for one, you know, the reason why I'm here, when you're thinking about going on the offense, when you're thinking about these actions, you all here in this county have a role to play. When we see this reconciliation bill passed by only 2 votes in the U.S. House of Representatives, you know, we have 3 representatives in New Jersey that voted for that effort to move forward on a reconciliation. Putting that pressure on. But also, look, you know, New Jersey, we are one of only 2 states right now that has a state level election, a governor's race happening this year. I have colleagues from around the country that are coming up to me and saying, what's happening in New Jersey? How does it feel on the ground? You know, what happens in this election in New Jersey is going to have national implications. National implications that are going to shape how people perceive what comes next. So you all have something you can do that people in 48 other states cannot do right now. You know, try to think through ways in which you can channel. And again, I can't talk about politics, but I can at least remind you about Election Day this year, about what it is that we can do to try to mobilize people and try to figure out, hey, look, we do have something. You know, there are ways in which we can do this, and the problems that we face aren't just at the federal level. It requires every level of government. In the same way that I'm trying to mobilize, I'm in touch with our Attorney General here in New Jersey, trying to engage on a number of fronts. I'm mobilizing federal workers. I'm trying to engage and pushing forward on some of that litigation. But we also need to make sure we have our local leaders in the county and across the state, others, trying to mobilize in that way. And whoever is the next governor of New Jersey will have an unbelievably important role in shaping how this state fights, how this state stands up, and be able to engage in that way. So that's something I want to just continue to remind us on. I loved your statement. I loved your response. First of all, thank you for being here. And it's important to be able to have young people show up, get engaged. It's something that just gives me that sense of hope and that sense, and you're absolutely right. You know, it is about how we go on the offense and talk about, you know, fixing these big ideas, these big problems that we're facing. That's not going to happen just, you know, just by incrementalism. Like, we need to be thinking big, trying to engage. And look, you know, when it comes to our own ability to do reconciliation, I was part of an effort to be able to mobilize when it came to climate change and when it comes to lowering healthcare costs and other things like that. I'm proud of what we got done, but yes, there is still a lot more that we should have done. But what we learned from that process is that it isn't just about passing that legislation, but the Democratic Party, we were terrible at messaging and telling people about what impact we had. And that's why I'm trying to step up here and engage with you, and I'm trying to do this as a means by which to get and encourage all of my colleagues to go out there and do town halls, to be able to go out and do all that we have, to be able to mobilize and push out the big ideas that are out there. But yes, you know, we need to give that sense of vision, that sense of where we're going, that sense of hope, and I think that what you laid out is something we very much need to rally around. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Leanna Jones. I'm from Milford, New Jersey in Hunterdon. I grew up in this district, and I'm a single mother to 2 children. I'm also a community organizer with New Jersey Organizing Project, and we organize around issues that cross, completely bipartisan. Everyone's welcome in our organization working together. So please join us. What I wanted to ask about, I'm a Hurricane Ida survivor. Our organization was actually started by Superstorm Sandy survivors. Hurricane Ida happened 3 years ago. The federal money that is supposed to come down to the state, to the people who are still not home, still not fully recovered, has not come down. So that is now under threat. A lot of people don't realize, I'm so glad that we're all agreed we need to save Medicaid, because we absolutely do. That's another one of our big campaigns. But people don't necessarily know about these other funding streams that come from HUD, that come down to New Jersey, but aren't still in the hands of us as storm survivors. I know a lot of other people in this room were affected by that storm. So how do we make sure, and how can you help us make sure that that funding doesn't get cut, along with Medicaid and all the things that help working families that are just trying to get back on their feet?
Happy National Down Syndrome Day, guys. My name is David Reyes. I'm a Special Olympics athlete from Somerset County. I will be voting for Steve Sweeney because he supports disability rights, and I already made my choice already. And, I'm just tired of people talking about Trump. People didn't come out to vote. Where were the Democrats? Where were all these Democrats that said, we don't want Trump? Where were these Democrats at? To help Sue Altman last year and to help Kamala. Where were all these Democrats, man? We need to get more Democrats out to come and vote and stop sleeping and come and vote. Voting is your right. It's your privilege.
Thank you for raising that. And look, like I said, I can't go into the politics here, but what I can say is it's kind of related to the last point that was raised. When we're thinking about how to mobilize people, how to be able to engage, we see how Trump's trying to do it by instilling a sense of fear, trying to weaponize in that kind of way. And we have to recognize that, look, we're going to go a different path, but how do we try to do it? We have something stronger, which is about giving that vision, giving that sense of hope, and I think that that's something, we need to get better at. But look, here in New Jersey, sometimes we take things for granted. We don't always, mobilize in the way that we need to. And what I've learned is, look, the way I say it is you can't just assume somebody else is going to fight your fights for you. You can't just assume that somebody else is going to step up and do the work. So if you got a problem with what's going on, the question is, what are you going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? So I'm grateful that you all came down here today. And I know we're all trying to brainstorm and think through what comes next and our individual efforts. And that'll be something that, again, we're going to continue to push forward on. But the sense of engagement that you're doing, please, keep it up. Stay informed. Come up with that plan of the people you're going to reach out to, the different causes and issues that you can engage on. And I know there's a lot of different issues that are out there, but I do think we need to kind of focus in and try to engage on some of these core things that are coming up down the pipe. My mom always told me that, if you try to do everything, you end up doing nothing. And, and you look at what's happening right now, you see the chaos, but remember, the chaos is the plan for them. This is going exactly, it's not out of incompetence, it's a little bit out of it, it's a lot of incompetence stuff too. But the effort that I'm trying to push forward, that this is what they're trying to do. They try to demoralize because there's so many things that are happening across the front. And our job is to try to guard against that in so many different ways. And when it comes to NJOP, thank you for your participation. They're one of the greatest organizations I've come across in New Jersey. And I did a lot of work when I represented Ocean County before, dealing with just the devastation that Superstorm Sandy survivors went through. And I just remember just the heartache in their, in their bodies when they saw people going through the exact same things with Ida, and realizing that we haven't fixed this broken system, and we're continuing to see it. And so, it just, on behalf of what we continue to see, I'm sorry for what you and others have gone through when it comes to Ida, when it comes to Sandy, on so many different fronts. One of the biggest responsibilities that I have is I'm the ranking member on the Disaster Response Subcommittee in the U.S. Senate. I specifically chose that to try to address the problems that we're facing right now, and try to think about how we get better at it here in New Jersey. When you see wildfires across the West and elsewhere, and we see the problems that are going to get worse and worse as we see this administration rolling back climate change. I mean, the fact that you got Lee Zeldin in EPA, it's just, we're going to have continued problems going forward here. And not only that, but we see an effort right now to just abolish FEMA. I mean, I know that there are real reforms we need to do. It is broken. There are problems there with FEMA, with HUD, with how SBA managed some of their grants and other things. There are real ways to be able to engage, but Trump tries to weaponize that to say, let's just get rid of it all. So yes, I met with state level OEMs and emergency responders here yesterday across the entire state and all the counties, trying to mobilize. Well, what do we want to see done in terms of reforms? How do I try to steer this in a way where we can best protect the needs of our state? But also trying to, again, work with NJOP and trying to make sure that we're mobilizing to make sure that the people, the families that are being hurt, that they're, we're seeing so many of the problems have just delayed our efforts. And like what we're seeing, especially with some of these storm survivors, is that, the money that they got, they were told, you can have this money, and the government told them, here are the things you can apply for, get grants. And then after a while, they told them, well, actually, no, sorry, we told you the wrong thing, now you got to give it back to us. They're trying to claw back tens of thousands of dollars. The people are like, it's in my home now. You did what you told us to do. You can't punish us for that. Those are the things we're going to continue to fight for. But thank you for working through NJOP to be able to continue to push in that direction. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Senator Kim, it's good to be with you again. First, I'd just like to say, for those Muslims throughout the state of New Jersey and throughout the world, may God Almighty, the gracious, the merciful, accept your fast, we're fasting right now, accept your good deeds, and accept the prayers that you're offering each day. With that said, Senator, we've met with you when you were a congressman, we met with you when you were running for Senate, and we're trying to meet with you, not really successfully, as a senator, because you've kind of dodged us. But let me get to the point. Let me get to the point. So with that said, the first time we met with you was actually during COVID. It was a video call. I'm going to get to that in a second. The second time we met with you was at Brother Sammy Shaban's house. You know Sammy. He's actually a Board of Education member in Franklin. This young man has lost roughly 50 members of his family in Gaza. He told you his story. One part of the story was his cousin had just newly gotten married, and he was obliterated. He disappeared, turned into dust. His pregnant wife at the time miraculously survived. And guess what? 3 days ago, she and the baby that was in her stomach have been obliterated. They're gone. With that said, you seem very knowledgeable here, but when we first approached you 5 years ago, it was on the issue of Israel and our view that it's an apartheid state. We gave you examples of it, and one of the examples we gave you, and I was shocked to hear you say, oh, I didn't know that. One of the examples, for those who don't know, in Israel and the West Bank, there are literally two justice systems. Literally, I'm not saying as an example. There's a military justice system for people who live in the West Bank, and there's a civil justice system for people who live, for Israeli settlers that live a mile apart in some cases. We gave you, I'm going to give you a real example now. Because as you know, and you know well, you said you didn't know, you said you needed time to get to know it. I'm going to give you a real example. This is about 7 years ago. Israeli settlers invaded a town called Duma in the West Bank. They firebombed the home, and the residents of the home were burned alive, burned to death, except for one child. The minor that was participating in that murder, he went through the Israeli civil justice system, and he got 2 years suspended sentence. Just 2 weeks ago, there was a 15-year-old child who got caught throwing rocks in the West Bank. He just got sentenced to 18 to 20 years in a military justice system that doesn't allow him to see his parents, that doesn't allow him to have a lawyer, at least initially, that talks to him in a language that he doesn't speak, and you claim that you didn't know that. That was 5 years ago. Do you know it now? Do you know that now? Second item. Now, you're going to have to bear with me. We've got 60,000 people that have been killed.
Is there a time limit?
Yeah, there's a point. All right, so the point is, I was going to play a song from Bruce Springsteen, right? And the song from Bruce Springsteen is called Chimes of Freedom. It was in support of Amnesty International. Amnesty International has said that Israel is an apartheid state, and they documented in a 300-page report. Unless anybody here can tell me that Bruce Springsteen supports a racist organization, I'm going to give you, because you refused to accept it last time. There's the 300-page report in here. You can read it, and then tell me what's wrong in it. Not like what you usually do, dodge and not answer the questions when we ask you questions. There's a second report in there. That child, it's from UK Save the Children. Children that go into Israeli military detention, 65% of them get tortured, many of them sexually. It was a report by Save the Children, UK. Please read, that report is in there as well. Please read that. Now I want your answer to whether you will ever acknowledge that any Israeli soldier has ever done anything wrong. Please.
We're done. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Jersey, buddy.
Okay, my name is Victoria. I work with the Center for Independent Living in New Jersey. There are 12 of us. We have started a coalition, and we actually held a Protect Medicaid rally down in Trenton on the 6th of March, and it was successfully attended by over 600 people throughout the state. We are specifically for the disabled community and their families against cuts of Medicaid. We'd be happy to have you on board. I'm also the mom of a disabled adult child and the wife of a scientist who is the, I don't speak science, so forgive me. He's the director of the Genome Core Editing Facility at Rutgers Cancer Center. He's done a lot of work that thousands of people across the world have utilized techniques that he developed that help make cancer research go more quickly. So I say this because just like everyone else in this room, a lot of the changes that are happening right now for the person at the helm, they're having negative impacts on our personal lives. A lot of us in this room, our livelihoods are in jeopardy because of the cuts that they're making across the board, not just Medicaid, but to research and grants and everything. We do need to stand up together. We need to get our stories out there. I recommend everyone to seek me out, seek out the Alliance Center for Independence. We are collecting stories for people with Medicaid history to talk about why it's important to not let that go or let that be a loss. And for any one of you, I seriously, please, get your story out there. Social media right now is the only way that folks are seeing each other's stories, because whatever is going on with the media, there's like a kibosh on sharing things like this. We're not seeing anything out there that's happening. We're seeing it in little blips and blurbs. Well, let's grow those blips and blurbs and make sure that the world sees us, because they do, and they care. And there are comments coming out from all over the world saying to the US citizens, to us, to people in this room, that they care for us, they love us, to stand strong and stand together, because our Constitution is 250 years plus strong, and we are not going to let it go down without
I'll start with the first one here. I mean, look, we have had chances to be able to talk before, and I have also talked with a number of other Palestinian families and communities. I had a meeting today with people people who are just absolutely devastated by the resumption of conflict in Gaza. Yeah. And last week as well, I'm trying to meet with a lot of different groups around the state to be able to engage. And you're right, I think there's a lot of people, not just those that are that have family in Gaza and others, that when we see this resumption of violence right now, it's absolutely heartbreaking and devastating. And we see the loss of life. And yes, I do think that there's wrongdoing happening. I called out publicly saying that Netanyahu should not be resuming this violence. We should continue to seek that diplomatic resolution. I have called out publicly saying that he should not be closing the humanitarian assistance from being able to get into Gaza. I engaged with the World Food Program just a couple days ago, as I met with them just a couple weeks ago, about how at that time 600 trucks were getting into Gaza every single day with humanitarian assistance, trying to mobilize in that way, and now we're seeing 0 getting in each and every day right now. That is wrong. That is wrong there in Gaza. What is happening, and we're seeing a level of detentions and violence at the West Bank right now that we haven't seen in years. That's been going up and up. You're right, it's not getting enough attention. And what we see there is, yes, we're seeing efforts right now that are clearly creating that double standard, whether it's the checkpoints and how much a challenge it is, and how much we're seeing with the problems that are throughout the West Bank in terms of people just being able to live their lives. Yes, that's a problem. So yes, look, I will continue.
The question is on the children.
What's that?
The question is on the children. You saw the videos, and we asked you specifically. The videos of the Israeli soldiers invading Palestinian homes and literally kidnapping 12-year-olds at 3 o'clock in the morning. You were nearly in tears. Answer the question that I asked you about whether Israeli soldiers specifically harm children. Answer the question.
And we have seen some examples of that. And we want to make sure that, yes, I believe that the Leahy laws and other efforts should be in place in that type of way.
Keep your eye on the ball.
Yes, I condemn attacks against children and civilians. I also condemn Hamas attacking civilians on the other side. I condemn Putin kidnapping tens of thousands of children in Ukraine. This is something that we should try to stand up against in so many different ways. So look, I get it. I get it. But look, what we see right now, again, is, and I said this earlier, we see right now Donald Trump clearly, going this in an even worse direction. So much damage and danger. And I, as somebody who worked in diplomacy before, trying to engage and trying to see if we can mobilize, engaging with Egypt and others to be able to build the kind of long-term solution that can have a Palestinian state, to follow through in the two-state solution that our country has supported as a policy proposal for both Democrats and Republicans. Cannot allow the president to just try to say, we're going to own Gaza. It's absolutely not just offensive, but disgraceful for him to post an AI video of himself lounging on a beach in Gaza. So yes, look, it's a challenge. But we will continue to engage on this and continue to try to address these issues the best we can. And I'll continue to work with others and meet with us to be able to do that. Thank you so much when it came to the issue on the work about dealing with the first time I was kind of thinking about this in terms of the challenges when it comes to independent living, when it comes to the communities with disabilities, was about the funding freeze and the sense of just how damaging that would be. And we see again, that's an example where we see very clearly, the people in New Jersey that just wouldn't be able to live the kind of life that they deserve to be able to live, if we aren't able to provide that resource. So I'm so grateful that you're speaking out and showing, just what is at stake. And this is about, these independent living facilities all across New Jersey, all across the country. And I think that's one of the clearest examples. I tried to highlight this in a previous town hall that I've done, in terms of just the damage that would be done each and every day. I think making that visible, making that manifest is so critical. So just thank you for doing that. And I think that that's important for people to hear those direct stories and be able to lift it up. Thank you for that.
Hi, I'm Laura.
Oh, okay.
Hi, so good to see you again. Just quick observation and two asks. Really proud that you are our first Asian American senator in New Jersey. I am proud that my kids can see a reflection of themselves in me. So, another thing, I was a delegate at the UN Commission on the Status of Women last week, as a delegate for the Presbyterian Church. And I resonate what you said earlier about it being embarrassing on international forums where the US voice is absent. And I had meeting delegates from other countries, they apologized to me for when they learned that I'm American. And US only
Just say that they're sorry for you? Is that...
When we greet each other, where are you from? I had a Canadian apologize to me in the elevator. So anyway, it was almost embarrassing hearing the progress of all the other countries are making and committing to progress for women and girls' education all around the world, and not having US standing for anything. The only workshop that they co-sponsored with the Heritage Foundation was on transgender ideology. And so, two asks, will you commit to women's rights? Continue to commit to women's rights and making sure that we have the rights that we deserve. Our daughters and our sons will continue to have rights to make choices for their lives. And secondly, I wear lots of hats in lots of intersectional spaces as an advocate, activist, whatever. But my first motivator is as a parent. I am a parent of a transgender young adult in her young 20s right now. Now, in her teens, I tried so hard. I spent years trying to keep her alive from herself. And now I couldn't imagine that I'm at a place where I'm trying to keep her alive from my government. And so, she's finally at a happy place right now. And I just want these opportunities for all kids. To make sure our kids are safe.
Hi, Andy. My name is Wen Lin, and thank you for coming out to meet everyday people here. We really need this. The last 2017, every weekend I was out there protesting. I consider myself an activist, and I was at all those anger going for that, all those almost 4 years. This last 4 months, I've been burying myself in the sand. I can't bear myself to read the news. I cannot watch anything. Even with, I have a huge group of Democrat colleagues that, trying to do this, I have just been burying myself in the sand. And I really need this here today because I can face this emotion in this room actually motivates me. And the question about tax actually is an epiphany there to me because we face a difficult challenge in sending out a crisp and logical reasoning message that everybody can reason with, because I can tell you, even half of the country don't pay tax, doesn't beat the top 0.1% of people who don't pay tax. So we need to distribute the wealth better, and we need to send out the message that we do not want the oligarch country. And I challenge you to help us come up with a crisp. And we need the leadership in our country, not just Democrat. Leadership in the country who are sensible, who are decent people. We need a message out, and we need a crisp message out. Trump has Fox. What do we have?
And you see, so much of that message getting out. You're absolutely right. The message is important, and having that sense of simplicity in the message, and trying to have something that can really get at the fact that, again, we see that inequality that is in our society right now, but linking it to that sense of corruption, that linking it to that sense that the game, this system that we're in is rigged toward those that already have the resources, the wealth, the power. And I think that that's what is people feeling trapped. When I told you, I just want a chance for my kids to have a better life and more opportunities. We're not asking for the moon here in this room. Yet we have, again, these billionaires that have their own space program because they have so much money. And, I think that is something that is just infuriating in so many ways. And what I'll also say, and this is something that became all the more clear to me over the past couple of years, is that in politics we do get very caught up on, do we have the right message? Do we have the right message? But the other thing that I'll say that I've come to see as I go across New Jersey in particular, which is why I want to come here, another fundamental question is, does the message you're trying to convey actually get to the people you're trying to talk to? And so often the answer is no. And I think that is something that we need to get much more intentional on. We can't just say, oh, I sent out a tweet today or, post today, did my job. It's about trying to go out there and mobilize. That's why I think it's so important that we have the face-to-face, that we're having that opportunity to go out into the communities to be able to engage. I'm a Democrat that won a congressional district that Trump won twice. Out in Ocean County and elsewhere, we saw how we were able to mobilize that, by just, going out into the community and hammering away and continuing to try to push forward and be able to just show that we can do the work and be able to deliver in that capacity. So, I hear you on that front and just trying to make sure we are getting at that. And I think, it gets to the point that was just raised about, being just absolutely clear in terms of my commitment, our commitment to be able to protect women and defend women, to be able to defend the trans community at a time, when we see civil rights being absolutely eroded, which is why I've been supporting, the Equality Act to be able to codify, civil rights for the trans community, for the LGBTQ community. I think that is so absolutely critical at a time when we see those types of attacks. And it's just so shameful to see some of my colleagues in Congress leading the charge and trying to weaponize this to be able to have their own personal gain and to be able to get more followers in social media and other things like that. And a number of women coming in were talking to me about the SAVE Act. I don't know how many of you know about this, but this is an effort that's trying to make it harder to vote in this country than it is to buy a gun. In terms of all paperwork, and basically what it says is that if you're a woman who changed your name during marriage, you can't use your birth certificate anymore to be able to prove your voter registration, to be able to register to vote, and other things like that that are certainly going to intentionally disadvantage Those are the types of things where we see that sense of disenfranchisement on so many fundamental levels. So you're right, it is important, and it is sad that people around the world are just in shock about America right now. And sadly, what we see also is, we're starting to see this type of extremism getting engaged in different countries around the world too. This is now becoming a global phenomenon that we have to be worried about, and it very much gets to the heart of just how scary of a moment this is and why it's important to be able to engage and step up now. So thank you for what you're doing and for raising those points.
Senator, we're going to do final three questions.
And then I'll stick around and happy to chat with everybody who still haven't had their answers there.
Hello, my name is James Meister. I'm from Somerset High School, and I'm a Branchburg native. So I want to first share with you my sheer gratitude for you to come out here to Branchburg, because it's not often we get our politicians from Congress come to Branchburg Township. So thank you so much for coming on. My question for you is next week, Tom Kennedy Jr. has a teletown hall. Finally. My question for you is, if you could ask Tom Kennedy Jr. one question, what would that be?
Hi, yes.
Where are we at?
Hi.
Oh.
Hi, I'm a concerned mom. And in the last, how many months has it been? It feels years, but it's only been months. Yeah. When are we gonna see plans that Congress reaffirms that they are an equal branch of our government? Here's the real question. What are we doing to defend our children? Because our children have no voices. Okay, we are the only ones that can petition for them. And right now, we're seeing our Department of Education being gutted. We're seeing safety for planes, so we can't even go visit our families, being gutted. When are we going to see Congress take equal balance of power from this executive branch? When are we going to affirm that? I want to hear the case.
My name is Laura. I'm also from Branchburg, and I want to start by saying thank you so much for coming here. It's honestly such a breath of fresh air to meet so many other people who are just as worried about this country as I am, and to know that we have a senator that actually cares about us and shares these concerns. So something that we haven't discussed a lot today, I could go off a lot of issues. There's a lot of things I'm worried about, but I'm 17 years old. And we have climate change decisions that are being made by people that are 3 or 4 times my age. When it's my generation and my generation's children.
Some of them are even older.
Yeah, exactly. But it's my generation and my generation's children that are primarily going to suffer from it. I mean, we have a president that said drill, baby, drill, that pulled us out of the Paris Agreement. And honestly, it's a little terrifying. We have a lot of really pressing issues, but none of these issues, including the economy or anything else, is going to matter if we don't have a planet to have an economy on. So my question is, what is our plan, your plan against climate change, and what can we as a state and a society do against it?
No, thank you for that. Let me just start with that, just because it's been on my mind a lot, because it just feels like that this issue has really dropped off the radar, and it's just I know that there are a lot of crises out there, but we can't just give up hope on this. And what we've seen so far, as mentioned, we talked about how the Democrats used reconciliation. We pushed forward on climate change as one of the biggest issues that we were mobilizing on, and look, we were able to get a lot of important things through. Things that were really supercharging renewable energy and other issues like that. And unfortunately, yes, we are seeing efforts that are undermining that, but we also have seen is a number of these like a number of these communities, especially communities where they were moving forward on projects, even in red states, they are putting the pressure on saying, well, no, look, we want to continue on this. The advanced manufacturing in this country that we are pushing to try to mobilize and to spur that innovation here domestically wants to continue. So this is something that I've been engaged in terms of saying, hey, look, right now we can be able to push forward on the private sector side, continue a lot of the efforts that we've been trying to do to spur that innovation, to spur that growth. Yes, they don't have as much resource and as much credits from the federal government to be able to do that, but a lot of that has already been continuing to move forward, and that's something that we absolutely need to keep our foot on the gas about, and be able to understand that we're doing that under that guise of being able to spur advanced manufacturing, things that I think we can try to build a wide coalition around to be able to engage. That, and then here in New Jersey, continuing to spur everything we can. I was down in Cape May trying to mobilize about protecting our environment, about spurring the efforts to be able to offset the damages of climate change, and that's something that NJOP and others we need to continue to show that no community in the United States is immune to natural disasters. When we see that happening, it doesn't matter if it's a blue area or a red area, we're seeing disasters left and right getting worse and worse. And I do think that that's, again, a part of the reason I joined the disaster response subcommittee is I think that we can accomplish some of the things that we want to do on climate through this effort of mitigating and preventing natural disasters. And trying to be able to see if we can channel some of the resources and the efforts through that effort. So that's something that I'm taking on personally, trying to figure out how we can engage and how we can do this. But it absolutely needs to be something that, because, as I said, I got a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old. And when I think about, what kind of planet, what kind of world they're going to be living in when they're my age, this is something I feel very strongly about. And I do think, yes, that this is the benefit of how, I hope you see the benefit of having, a new generation of leaders stepping up, where and trying to be able to engage. I just proudly doubled the number of millennials in the Senate on the Democrat side, trying to make sure that we are mobilizing that way to be able to fight those fights, to be able to show what it means to be able to engage. And and I think that gets to this question about our children, and that's something that I feel very personal about. There was part of me when I first started in Congress, and where I was in Congress, and I was watching my colleagues. A lot of them have grown adult children, and they're going. And my colleagues are traveling abroad and going on these trips and doing these other things. And I'm trying to commute up and down from Jersey down to DC and spend as much time with my kids. I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old when I started in Congress. And there was part of me that was thinking, maybe this isn't the right time for me to do this work. Maybe I got too many things on and I can't give all the attention that I need that this job demands. But then the pandemic happened. And all of a sudden I realized, look, it's important to have the voices of young parents in the Congress, to have the voices of young parents dealing with young kids. And it was important for me to speak out as a young parent during the pandemic and say, I have no child care for my kids now. I'm worried about their health. I don't know what's happening with their schools. I don't know what's happening. And when whether it's me, trying to question RFK Jr. or somebody else, it's important for me to be able to talk about that as a parent and engage on these. And that's why I chose, for instance, to be on the Healthcare and Education Committee. To look out for our education at a time when the Department of Education is under assault. And I can tell you, yes, it is absolutely terrifying. And that's why I went today and I spoke and did a town hall with educators in the state earlier today to be able to talk with hundreds of educators across the state about what it is that they're worried about, how can I best be able to mobilize. We are moving forward on an effort to be able to stand up to this effort. What I can assure you is that right now, when they're talking about abolishing the Department of Education, they know that they cannot do that without Congress's approval. And we are mobilizing that way. And I will tell you, I will do everything I humanly can to be able to stop them from gutting our Department of Education and education in this country. And what allows us to be able to mobilize that in a strong way, and this is something that we are trying to do on a national level, is say, hey, look, this is why I was saying, mobilizing and engaging communities and organizations, especially those dealing with disabilities, is that what they're trying to do with the IDEA funding that is supporting, the ability for people with disabilities to get the kind of education that they deserve, that is affecting not just, again, Democratic states, blue states, it's affecting everybody. Especially when, some of these states that have been underfunding their education, when they wake up and see what would happen if they don't get Title I funding or Title II funding or other types of funding when it comes to the federal dollars, they will see just how little they have left. And we have to make sure that we are mobilizing and doing everything we can. And when we're seeing Speaker Johnson, when we're seeing Senator Thune abdicating the legislative branch's authority, yes, that is something that should be terrifying. That is something that should be absolutely devastating in terms of what happens next. And look, I will be honest with you. I cannot look you in the eye right now and tell you that there will be that when push comes to shove, that my Republican colleagues will do the right thing. And what they tell me privately is not what they're doing and saying publicly. And
don't let the Democrats vote for things capitulate.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's why it is important that we have these town halls and we try to make sure that other Democrats have this experience that they're hearing from the people, because again, you're the bosses. You're the ones that we are supposed to be responsive to. And when we're going through this upcoming process, as I said, the reconciliation process is next. This fight to save Medicaid, this fight then after that for the next budget round, we need to make sure we learn the right lessons from this last debacle, and be able to make sure to be able to push forward that way. So that's important in so many ways. And then this last question in terms of Tom King Jr., I think that's a really good place to do the push on. But I think I would probably, if I had the chance, if I was his constituent, I had the chance to be able to ask him a question, I would say, why are you hiding from your constituents? As I said, no one forced him to do this job. I know someone who very well should have been doing this job. And if you don't want to talk to the people that you represent, why are you doing the job? And it just gets back to the fundamental sense of this work that we have before us. And I really hope that you take away from this. Look, we are at a very scary moment. You have every bit as much right to feel the way that you do. And I want you to know I feel it too. And that we have to make sure that we're engaged and working together to be able to mobilize, and we're paying attention, thinking about all the different ways that we can engage. But each and every one of us has our own agency and our power. Don't assume that someone else will fight your fights for you. And that is something that, again, we channel into what is leading up to the fight here in New Jersey this November with the elections. We've channeled it into the ways in which we engage, and not just at the federal level, but every level of government. And we choose the issues that we care about. We work alongside the people that we think we can continue to sustain that energy through. And I will be right there with you. And so thank you so much, Branchburg, for coming on out, for Somerset County for coming on out. And continue to work